Welcome. In this clip, we discuss the ISLM system and the effect of certain exogenous shocks on the economy using the ISLM system. So we start with the ISLM system's basic graph, which is nothing else than nominal interest rate, or depending on the textbook, real interest rate can also be here. So this is on the vertical axis, and we have real output on the horizontal axis, and we know already that we have a negatively sloped IS curve and a positively sloped liquidity money curve. So the investment savings curve shows us those combinations of the interest rate and real GDP at which the goods market is in equilibrium. That means where Y equals the total planned expenditure in the economy, and the liquidity money curve, or LM curve, is going to give us those combinations of interest rate and real GDP at which the money market is in equilibrium. That is where the money demand equals the money supply, and this is the LM curve. So we know that the equilibrium in the whole economy must be at that point when both markets are in equilibrium. So the intersection of the LM and IS curves are going to give us an equilibrium. We can even say a general equilibrium in the economy, even though it's very important that basically this system is explaining demand shocks and cannot explain how the economy reacts to shocks in supply. For that one, we are going to look at the ASAD system. But nevertheless, because the Keynesian theory was about the importance of demand shocks in causing recessions or booms in the economy, the ISLM system is very much compatible with the Keynesian view on business cycles. Of course, this means that this is a partial view. So what would happen in the economy if there is some change in one of the main variables in the economy? So let's see then certain shocks in the real market, so the goods market, the real side of the economy. We are going to assume that there is an increase in the public spending. So there is now a fiscal expansion in the economy. Using the ISLM system, we can do this derivation graphically. So we had initially an IS curve, and we had initially an LM curve, which gave us an initial equilibrium in the economy. So what is going to happen if the public spendings or any other autonomous planned expenditure increases? To understand what happens, we can look, for example, at the market for loanable funds. So in the market for loanable funds, we had at this particular interest rate an equilibrium. So we know that there was a savings and there was a certain investment demand, which gave us an equilibrium, uppercase I1 investment. Now what happens if G goes up? We already know that S was equal to Y minus C minus G in equilibrium. Or, in other words, we knew that we had a public expenditure which was Y minus C minus T, and we had also this was the private expenditure, and a public expenditure which was, public savings which was nothing else than T minus G. Okay, so there was a private savings and a public savings, and if you added up these two, then you got the national savings. So what happens if G goes up while, it is very important, we used the ceteris paribus assumption, meaning that T didn't change. Now in this case, you can see that the public savings decreased. So there must be a negative shift. Excuse me, the slope remains the same, so I'm going to redraw this. Leftward negative shift in savings. And then the new equilibrium must be, due to the crowding out effect, a lower level. And equilibrium investments decrease therefore. And we know that for the equilibrium to happen, there must be also a higher interest rate. That means that the new equilibrium is only possible if the IS curve shifted to the right. So this is going to be the effect of a positive change, an increase in any of the planned expenditure categories. We have higher GDP at higher interest rate. So what happens if we have a change in the money market? To do this, we can again draw first, excuse me, I'm going to use a different color again. So here I'm going to use then depiction for the ISLM system. So we have here IS and an LM lines, and here again we draw just simply the money market graph here. So we know that initially we had a Y1 and lowercase I1 equilibrium combination of interest rate and real GDP. It meant that the equilibrium must be also at lowercase I1 interest rate in the economy. So that means that here, for example, we have the money supply, and here we have a money demand, which I'm going to draw a bit better here. Money demand. So this was our initial situation with M1 amount of money in the economy. So what could change here? What would be an exogenous change here? Well, an exogenous change could be, for example, that the prices in the economy reduce. So what happens if we have a deflation? Well, if you have a deflation, then the total value of goods and services that you need to use your money to make transactions with reduces. So you will have a lower demand for money, and the money demand shifts to the left, and we have a new lower money demand curve. Now the equilibrium must therefore be at a lower I2 nominal interest rate. The only way how this can happen if the LM curve shifted to the right, and that means that we will have higher GDP in the economy. So a reduction in prices resulted in a rightward shift in the LM curve. Now, of course, you could also look at the effect of a change in the money supply. So what would happen if we had a monetary expansion in the economy? Again, I'm going to use the same two graphs side by side to look at this event. We have therefore a money supply, we have a certain money demand, which is going to give us then an equilibrium, and again we assume that we have here a general equilibrium. So here we have equilibrium in both the real part of the economy, the goods market and the money market. So what happens if the monetary base increases in the economy because the central bank carries out open market operations, so it is going to buy bonds from the households, for example. Now, if that happens, then because money supply equals multiplier times the base money, so that means that there must be a rightward shift of the money supply. So if there is a rightward shift of the money supply, then the new equilibrium must be at a lower interest rate, for example, lowercase I2. That is, then at the new equilibrium, the LM curve must be to the right of the original LM curve. And that means we will have higher real output in the economy and lower interest rate. Using the same way of thinking in this system, you can depict and analyze the effect of policy changes and external shocks to the economy in the short run, because don't forget that this is a model for the short run fluctuations of the economy. If you want to understand the long-term effects of certain policies and changes on the economy, then you will need a more complex model, which is called the ASAD model, and that is going to be the next and final topic in this course.